if that was a conceptual framework, now we would like to try to ask our experts to take a practical issue, a burning practical issue, and talk to that. And I think there's no better person than Professor Gunasekara, whom I personally know, has given life to values education, particularly in terms of critical thinking, logical reasoning, humanities and values and stuff, which is not instrumental in that narrow sense. So I would like to invite you, Professor, to talk about what actually should be done in the education system, particularly in the higher education setup, to make this a reality. You know, we have these nominal courses which say critical thinking, which is a history of critical thinking. We have another rote learning course. What are your suggestions?
I think you're right on that, because we have these catchphrases, you know, soft skills as opposed to hard skills, you know, how do you manage your ethics, life skills, etc. Actually, if you look back again historically, from time immemorial, education means certain things. I mean, in our own career, what does it say? Kanakara said pearl of great price, but what does it say? It says something that cannot be taken by kings and princes, something that cannot be washed away. That is the idea of a holistic education, which gives you the capacity to think, as you said, analyze, not this kind of narrow knowledge-based education, but the goals of education is opening a mind to think, to independently think, and also have personal integrity. And that value system should therefore be embedded in any kind of quality education. Now the sadness of it is, Lakshman, you said it, you said in answer to that question that Arjuna posed to you, you said, if you have a good education, it doesn't matter. You are employable because you go with that asset. But see, when you have the kind of poor quality, under-resourced education, bad teacher training, what do you give these children? You can't give them that value base that they need, because the value base, the analytical capacity, the critical thinking is not a catchphrase. It's an internalized human behavior pattern, and that can only come with the best and broadest of education. I was on the Fulbright Commission, and I used to see the best and the most brilliant people come there, and I come back with a deep sense of faith in the public education system. So there are kids and students who survive, but that is, a country is never, an institution is never judged by the 5%. You have to look at the mainstream, and we are failing the mainstream terribly for the reasons that you have said. So in that process, then what happens? Why is it happening? We have to address the resource allocation, but also the institutional failures. If you have poor teachers who can't give that ethos, then that student doesn't get that gift of a good education. If you have no access to IT, everything else, the minds are not broad. And then, when you have the whole problem of monolingualism, you have immediately cut off that human resource from access to the broad concept of knowledge, ideas, etc. And sadly, that has affected our disciplines, yours and mine, social sciences, humanities and law. And then you say, no, it's STEMs. We are still saying STEMs, when the rest of the world is saying STEAM. Right? What are they saying? In Harvard, they have created the Center of Excellence, a former president, to combine STEMs and arts and humanities. So it's STEAM now, but we're still talking STEM. So our concept of the purpose of education is STEM. Now what does that happen? People are qualification obsessed. They want to punch into the computer and get, they don't care how. Apparently there is a thing called contract cheating now, my colleagues tell me. You can contract out and get a whole paper, a whole PhD written. And people are producing these and coming into the system. So what does that do? That again is an immediate problem. What is our approach to plagiarism? I was appalled. In some universities, they don't have a policy on plagiarism. There should be a zero tolerance policy on plagiarism. But now they are saying this is 5% plagiarism. This is 10%. Is it 10.5%? And then what happens? You're producing a person without the personal integrity, the ethical values that would make that person a good professional, an honest public servant, with personal integrity, and better still, a lawyer. So you have lawyers maybe who are doing this. What kind of lawyers would they make? So this idea of the best of education and the opening out of the mind that comes with a good education is not happening in the case of the majority of students. As I said, there are the brilliant ones, the dandelion kids, but not the mainstream. And what we have done is we have denied that mainstream. And we have done it also with our flawed monolingual education in the two disciplines that both I think Arjun and I agree. A country needs its philosophers, right? It needs its thinkers. It needs its social scientists. But what has happened? Lakshman, you're in the STEMS area, right? And what do they say? Oh, these are unemployment. They can't think, they don't know anything, they are ignorant, and therefore low profile for, even less resource allocation for humanities, social sciences and law. And what has happened? Actually, medicine, architecture, engineering has produced quality graduates who can enter the world market. Who has failed? The humanities and social sciences, because they don't have those resources. And then what happens? They are the people who, as you said, are unemployable because they lack the thinking skills, the writing skills, and the kind of education that you talked about, Lakshman, that makes them employable. So it's a kind of a vicious cycle. You know, you can't strip education from its goals. You can't, and resources, with the human or otherwise, the two are extremely linked. And worse still, I think, because of all these failures in the education, the people who are coming into councils in another generation, senates, etc., will not stand up for the values that they should in education. So that contributes to a further conflict. And worse, when you have that kind of failure to understand the objectives and purpose of education, you encourage suppression of dissent, authoritarianism, and that kills all creativity in the school, in the university, in all institutions. And that passivity is coupled with an enormous embedded strengthening of power. You're a dean, you're a this, you're a that. You have power, and you better all listen to me, because if you don't, there will be the consequences. Then intolerance of dissent. And intolerance of dissent goes down to the student violence in campuses. The man, the person who's supposed to have killed his girlfriend, killed her because she said, I don't want to marry you. What kind of intolerance is that? And it is that intolerance which is replicated in the political arena, carried out in the educational institution. So, in order to change all this, we have to go back to what you said. Strengthen the system, provide the quality, give these things so that you produce an educated person who has both the life skills and the capacity to be a citizen.